Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this night-ending bonus upload, shall we? Hey Jeff, I just wanted to say my name is Jay. I'm a male nurse. I work at Beth Israel Hospital in Livingston, New Jersey. I am an essential personnel. I work mid-shift, 12 p.m. till 8:30 p.m. I drive a 2019 GMC Arcadia Royal Blue. I travel from Orange 15 minutes away. I take a long road that is heavily forested on both sides. Route 508 is a road. Look it up on Google Earth and you'll see it goes for several miles. It was like any other night leaving work. The sun has not yet gone down. I'm making my way on Route 508, 5 minutes from home, when I run over something at the time that blew my tire out, so I managed to pull over to the side and change it. No big deal, only a few moments. As I exit my vehicle, I went to the rear of my SUV and got the spare and tire iron as I was proceeding to change my tire. I heard rustling from the wood line, which was about 30 feet away by the time it was starting to get dark also. As the rustling continued, I heard a deep, guttural growl. I immediately stopped, raising up the tire iron in hand, ready to whack whatever came out. Never mind what I expected. It would be a 7-foot werewolf, as the one in Bad Moon. Orange eyes, brown fur, and shark teeth. Where it was coming from, my auto headlights partially lit it up. I thought if it charged, I would not make it into my car. It was going to be on top of me. Then, all the worse luck, it charged me, and I took off in the opposite direction across the highway or road, whichever you want to call it, into the woods, to slow it down to be able to double back to my car. It closed the gap in a matter of seconds. I knew I wasn't making it back to my car, so I stopped with a 4-way tire iron in my hand and I swung it. It dodged it like it was nothing. It kept coming at me from different points, trying to tire me out. No pun intended. I felt like I was its toy, and it was toying with its food. I was about 25 yards away from my vehicle, so I slowly made my way back as I heard it circling me. As I got to the road, I sprinted to my vehicle as a last-ditch attempt. It pounced from the wood line to the road. I launched the iron at full force as it was landing, clocked it right upside its head. Didn't faze it, and I'm a big guy. Jumped in my car and peeled out. Flat on 2 bolts holding it together. I made it home, locked everything, and slept with my handgun. Actually, I didn't sleep. Today's second subscriber, New Jersey encounter. Hello, Jeff. Thank you for replying back to my email to you. I have an encounter I'd like to share with you. I've never told anyone about this encounter because I knew I'd be ridiculed. I would have suffered because of it. I'm soon to be 55 years old, and, well, I think it's time to share my encounter. and I feel comfortable with doing so with you and my fellow subscribers to your channel. My encounter took place 30 years ago. I was 24. It took place in Lambertville, New Jersey. That's my mom's hometown. I have a large family on my mom's side, all from that area. I'm from Bucks County, PA, but I spend so much time with my uncles and cousins in Lambertville that I feel I have two hometowns. I know both areas like the back of my hand. Now, as I said, I was 24 years old. I was a very athletic person back then. And I've been hunting and fishing and camping since I was old enough to pee with my dad and uncles and cousins on both sides of my family. So, I'm very well versed with outdoor survival. I was going through a very hard time at this point in my life. I suffered some very great personal losses, and I was lost and angry. I got myself into some legal trouble as well. Fighting and drinking types of stuff. I decided I needed to just get away, isolate myself, and get in touch with my spiritual side. Do some self-evaluation, get my head and my life in order. But where could I go and do that? Then I thought of a perfect place outside of Lambertville, New Jersey. A happy place where I'd spent a lot of time with my cousins fishing and camping. We called the place the Third Hole. Don't ask me why, I don't know. It's just been always called that. Now, to get to Third Hole, you had to walk. You could not drive, so I parked my car by an old cemetery. And the easiest way to get there is to walk along train tracks going through the woods and thicket. It was really hard and would take too long. Now, I had not been there for about 10 years or so, but I knew the way quite well. I would have to walk approximately 5 miles down the tracks. It was a beautiful August morning, a little hot, but that didn't bother me. I had my rucksack, my supplies, fishing rods, my .357, and my 12-gauge shotgun, and its case, as well as a cooler with food, soda, and water. My tackle gear was in my rucksack. I locked my car and started my trek to the Third Hole. I felt good. I felt at home, peaceful. I walked slowly and steadily, at a leisurely pace. It took me about 2.5 hours to get there, I guess. I don't remember. I did not take a watch with me. When I got to the Third Hole, which is by and partly under the train trestle, and an old one at that. Now, it's deep in the woods, but the area around it was cut down in a circle about 200 yards circumference. Long ago, I guess, the train line, mainly a freight line, that is the Third Hole, is just that water hole about 70 yards around, fed by a stream that is stocked with trout, bass, carp, crappie, the usual fish species in Pennsylvania. But the game fish seem to make their way here as well and stay in the hole. It was never a big fishing area, only a few locals knew about it. My family being one, the nearest house was 3 miles away, so immediately when I got there I noticed that it hasn't been used in a long time. It was overgrown with grass and weeds, so I made myself a small camping area, pitched my tent, made a fire pit, collected rocks, made the circle, then collected firewood for later. That evening there is a very large old tree stump, a couple of them for a matter of fact, next to the camp, which I did use as a table and a stool to sit upon, so I built my campfire between them. I finished my camp preps, I set my rods up, had my lures and live bait, so I used one with live bait and the one with lures, figured that I'd try to catch my dinner. I set my rods up and took out my Walkman, placed my headphones on my head and cast out my bait line, and then I used my lure rod. Got lost in some Led Zeppelin. I was at peace. No anger, no racing thoughts, no distractions. This was going to be a nice weekend alone, or so I thought. Boy, I was wrong. I fished, no worries, caught a few small trout, threw them back, changed my bait line. Some small fish nibbled off, and kept fishing. I finally caught 4 nice-sized rainbow trouts. That was my dinner. I cleaned them, washed them in the stream, laid them on some tin foil on the stump, seasoned with some seasonings I had brought with me. I brought some wild rice with me as well. Got out my camping skillet and foldable bottom, used my spring water for rice, which I started to cook first on the fire since it would take the longest. Then the fish kicked back and watched the sun start to set. This time I was listening to some Pink Floyd. By the time my rice was done, it was early but dark. I got my Coleman lantern, lit it, the whole campsite lit up. I spitted my fish and started to cook them over the fire, slowly turning them. Man, did I feel relaxed and great. Every fiber of my being was just loose. I felt comfortable in my own skin for the first time in a very long time. And I was hungry. I can't wait to get some fresh fish and wild rice. My fish was done and I was drooling. It was totally black now except for my lantern and the fire. I took the fish off the spit, placed it on the tin scoop, some rice, and sprinkled some salt, grabbed a soda from my cooler, took my headphones off, and that's when it hit me, an odd feeling. Something just wasn't right with the night. I put my plate down by my feet and listened to the night around me, and boom, that's that. What I noticed, I had my headphones on all day, rocking out, that I couldn't notice. There was no sound, no crickets, no frogs, no coons or possums moving or sputtering in the woods. No bats. Not even a mosquito was around. Now, you have to understand I'm used to the woods and I don't scare or freak out easily. In fact, never. I'm 6'4", 290. Not an inch of fat on me, at least back then anyway. My arms were jacked, and I was bench pressing over 400 pounds. I boxed, mixed martial arts, and practiced Muay Thai. I was cut and an intimidating figure. I also was a crack shot. I reached over the stump and pulled my shotgun to me and checked my loads. It was loaded with double-aught buck, and I had my .357 on my hip with hollow points. I shouldn't have felt uneasy, but I did. And I don't know why, at least at that moment. I didn't pick up my plate, and I did pick up my plate, and I slowly started to eat after a few moments of uneasiness. It was growing. Something told me to slowly turn around. I felt like I was being watched. As I slowly turned my head, I totally lost my mind. Crouching on the stump behind me, just to the left, about 8 feet away, was a frickin' walking, breathing nightmare from horror movies. It was a friggin' werewolf, but that couldn't be right. It was only quarter moon. I closed my eyes, figured when I opened them this hallucination would be gone. But I was wrong. When I opened my eyes, he was still there. And yeah, I say he because I could see his genitalia. And he was all boy. He was just squatting like a man on his horse with his arms resting on his thighs. And yes, I say arms. This thing had hands, not paws. Very long and slender, kind of like raccoon hands. What is an opposable thumb and a very long, sharp claws on the end. Long ears with tufts of fur on the very top. Very long snout. Lucky dogs, but wild animals and a mouthful of very sharp, shiny teeth. Like too many teeth for its mouth. Its eyes were a golden yellow, and they seemed to glow with their own light. And like I said, I'm a pretty big guy, and this thing was twice as wide as me, and then some. It was on its haunches. It was well over 6 feet tall. The arms were twice as big as mine. Its chest and shoulders were just huge. Its thighs were humongous. Its stomach was lean, narrow, but ripped beyond belief. It was black as coal, but its muzzle had some gray around it. And there were some streaks of gray in its fur. And there was a tail, short, hanging over the stump. Taking all of this in only took a few seconds, but felt like hours. There was no strong smell coming from it. It made no sound coming up from behind me. Hell, I couldn't even tell you how long it was even there. I just knew I was dead. I didn't stand a chance with this thing. On a physical level, with those claws, it would cut me in half in seconds, and I knew it. My only chance was my guns. I slowly eased my hand to my shotgun. When I did this, his eyes moved to my hand, and he ever so slightly moved forward as if he was going to spring at me. I slowly moved my hand back, and he relaxed. Now I smelled an odor of crap real strong, and realized it was coming from me. I had soiled myself out of pure fear, and I swear this thing smiled, and it actually sniffed the air, leaning its head slightly towards me, and its muzzle wrinkled way up as enough to say, "Man, you stink." Then something strange happened. I could see it relax. It just relaxed, as I did earlier. Its shoulders loosened, and it slumped. Its biceps loosened up, its legs muscles seemed to loosen, and my fear seemed to dissipate greatly. It then looked at my fish. I said, "You want them? They're yours. Take them." He looked at me and cocked his head sideways. I slowly lowered myself off the stump to the ground, lowered my head and eyes from him, and slowly, very slowly, scooted back away from the fire, the stump, and from my shotgun. My .357 was on my hip, but I knew if I reached for it, I was as good as dead. I kept scooting back. He kept watching me. When I was about 20 feet away or so, he moved. I stopped scooting back. I just froze. He hopped off the stump and stood up at his full height. He was at least 9 feet tall, in every inch. And that was when I noticed that his waist was really narrow, and that his legs were built just like dogs. He took one step at the fire. That's 8 feet in one step, at least. He looked at me, and then I reached down. His arms fell to his knees, really long, from the elbow to the hand. They were abnormally long, longer than an upper arm was. He grabbed the spitted fish, looked at me, and just leapt across the stream, about 35 feet or so, and was gone. It was so fast that it took me a while to realize what had just happened, and that he was gone. I sat there, shaking, crying, not ashamed of any of it. That thing was terrifying. It stood on its hind legs like a man. This thing was not made to or supposed to exist. They were killing machines. I was and am a very lucky person. I never went back there to the third hole again, nor have I ever camped out there again. I still fish during the day with others, and I don't go into the woods alone, ever. So that's my encounter. Believe me or don't, I don't care. I know what happened. I was there, and I wish to all that is holy that I wasn't. I walked out of the third hole broken, scared, crappy, and all night with my guns and my lantern. I don't remember doing it. In fact, I don't even remember driving out of there. I never went back. My family has had to come to me or call me if they want to see and talk to me. Anyway, that's my story. Thank you, Jeff, for reading my encounter. Maybe, just maybe, my nightmares of 30 years will finally get better. Now I know it wasn't a werewolf, but a dogman. Although that knowledge does not make it any less terrifying, because I told someone finally. God bless. I hope you're feeling better. Respectfully yours, E. Today's third New Jersey subscriber Dogman submission. Hey Jeff, I've been meaning to write to you and relay a Dogman sighting here in northern New Jersey by my, at the time, future sister-in-law and brother-in-law in the town of Hopatung here in northern New Jersey. But first I want to tell you about a weird occurrence at my last apartment that had my wife and I on edge a few nights afterward. One night around spring of 2018, my wife and I were watching TV in the living room at about 9:30. The sliding glass doors were to my left and the curtains were closed because people walk around the complex to get exercise, even at night, and it's weird that people can look inside, and it bugs us out when they appear out of nowhere. So at one point, we both hear this low, grumbling noise that reverberates in the room, even making my chest and stomach kind of vibrate, and at first, I couldn't tell where it was coming from until after giving my wife a look of WTF. I turned toward the sliding glass door to my left. The sound, it seemed, was coming from that direction. But how is it making me feel so strange inside? It lasted 4 to 5 seconds, and once it stopped, we both still had the look of WTF on our face and tried to figure out what the heck that sound was and where it had come from. My wife, Kay, offered the explanation that the guy in the apartment upstairs from us, Cody, must have been moving furniture or something, and that's what made the noise. True, Cody was a lousy upstairs neighbor, and nearly every night he seemed to be making noise by sliding things around up there, or dropping his bowling ball or whatever. But this noise was unlike anything that came from Cody's inconsiderate nightly activities. And she agreed with me that the sound seemed to be coming from outside. Looking back now, I wonder why we weren't more cautious or creeped out. But we went outside for a cigarette every 30 minutes or so, and the time was just about there. So maybe 15 minutes after we heard the strange sound, we went back to smoking cigarettes. It was almost 10 o'clock, and the night was chilly, dead quiet. The woods, less than 100 feet away from our building, which was in the outskirts of the complex, where there was a big field of grass before the woods, where a transit train ran. What bothered us was the smell that met our senses when we went outside to smoke. We waited to hear, Kay had to say, before I said anything, and I didn't have to wait but a few seconds before she said, "Ew, babe, what's that smell?" It was a sour smell of rotting animal carcass, blood, and urine mixed together, and it was all around us. That night there was no breeze. The air was chilly, as I said before, but pretty still. So it was hard to tell where the smell was coming from. We figured it had to be coming from the woods to our left, where they passed closest our apartment. There wasn't any garbage bags left outside by any of our neighbors that we could see, and anyway, we always seemed to be the only people that came outside onto the patios to sit in our chairs and enjoy the scenery. That smell was not garbage. It was the smell of death plus urine and blood. I've never smelled anything quite like that, except maybe roadkill. But all those smells combined was something way worse. We both finished our cigarettes and had enough of the nasty smell, and we went back inside to watch some TV. About 30 minutes later, we came back out for another smoke. I checked to see if there was anything near the door before opening it, but strangely this time the smell was completely gone, vanished. Neither of us could catch a whiff of it. And still the air felt very still, without a slight breeze, not to mention very quiet. Where'd the smell go? And more so, where did it come from in the first place? We have no idea. But once we talked about it, and possibility of the growling sound and terrible smell coming from the same source, we weren't so keen on going outside anymore that night. Maybe it was nothing, but we weren't feeling that. We really wanted to know what was going on, so we finished our cigarettes and went back inside for the rest of the night. Weird, huh? Ever hear of anything like that before? Couldn't have been our imagination. I feel like there was a Dogman possibly hanging out in the woods near our home. So, on to the story I heard from my sister and brother-in-laws. Kara and Kurt were driving home on Route 181 in Jefferson Township from a diner. That stretch of road is the Hapat Kong and has very few houses on that section and is very dark at night with no street lights. I have since driven down it with my wife during the day, and it's pretty woodsy, and it snakes its way through the hills, well, as they are driving with Kurt behind the wheel in his SUV, where the speed limit is 45 miles an hour, and out of the darkness to the right comes an animal. It appeared to materialize out of the night. It crossed the two-lane road mere feet in front of their car. Its paws, if that's what you want to call them, made contact with the pavement and then went bounding off over the guardrail. Kira said for a split second she thought they may collide with the enormous wolf-looking thing. But Kurt sort of froze and gripped the steering wheel instead of swerving, dumbfounded by what they were seeing. Once it was gone, the two of them were silent for a few moments. Then Kira spoke. "Do you remember that movie Silver Bullet?" "Yeah," Kurt said. "That's what I saw." When Kira and Kurt first relayed their story to me, it was on Easter at my mom-in-law's house. We had been talking about Bigfoot, and my girlfriend at the time, Cammie, asked me to tell Kira and Kurt about the Dogman and some of the YouTube videos I've been listening to. I told them about your channel, and they said some of the stories sounded fake, but more than a few really made the hair on the back of their neck stand up. As I finished, Kurt, who had just a minute ago scoffed at Cammie's interest in Bigfoot, turned to Kira and said, "Should we tell them our story of what we saw?" causing me to chuckle, thinking that he was joking with us and that Kira would just start laughing or play along and make something up on the spot. Boy, I was wrong. When Kira proceeded to tell me the story I told you about her and Kurt's sighting of the wolf crossing the road, she described it as being 6 feet wide and about 8 feet from nose to butt. It had a tail as well. It was pale gray and shaggy. She said the proportions of the thing were not right, though, and its head was oversized, and the shape of its body did not look like a natural wolf. Its front legs looked out of proportion with its body, and the way it moved was not right either. Like the proportions of its body caused it to move in a strange way. Thought it seemed very powerful and able to cover a huge distance. We do have a wolf sanctuary not far from here called Lakota Wolf Preserve, and most everyone has heard of it. And Kira has been there to see the timber and gray wolves in their outdoor enclosures. She has seen how big they are in real life, and up close no more than 10 feet away, behind 2 chain-link fences that separates them from visitors. She said that what she saw with Kurt that night looked different than those wolves in the preserve, and the werewolf from the movie Silver Bullet popped into her head right away due to the strange way it moved, its proportions, and its sheer size. The animal's back, while passed on all fours in front of the car, was well above the hood. Its legs were so long. This animal came out of the woods moving extremely fast from a high arching leap, landing on its feet on the road, then springing back up and to their left across the oncoming lane, making the entire distance of 35 feet look like it exerted little effort to travel before it practically flew into the woods and disappeared into the darkness. I was listening to their story with obvious excitement and asked them about the size and whatever other details they could provide, including the name of the road they saw it on. Kira and Kirk both said it was huge, bigger than the front of their SUV. Yeah, it was really big. My wife and I were astonished. My sister never told her about what they saw before, not until that day, when I told them about the coolest new cryptid on the block, Dogman, and how there were whole channels on YouTube dedicated to telling the stories of people's encounters with these things. They both aren't the type of make things up like that, especially Kurt. I've gotten to know him better since then, and I know he is a no-nonsense kind of guy. Well, Jeff, that's my encounter of what Kira and Kurt told me, and me and my wife, about their Silver Bullet encounter up here in North Jersey. I know that you've told some other stories and sightings here in Jersey, and hearing those from you, I just had to send my story to you. So that the listeners know that along with mountain lions and the Jersey Devil, looks like Dogman has made a home in New Jersey as well. Today's fourth subscriber, New Jersey Dogman submission. Sorry, Jeff, it's taken me so long to send you my encounter. You know how it is with everyday life. Okay, my encounter is not very long, and it's not like most of them. You can write this up however you see fit. My encounter happened back in 2016. I lived on the border of Hardyston Township and Franklin Borough in Sussex County, New Jersey. It was around the end of fall, beginning of winter. Where I lived at the time, there were 2 graveyards behind my home, and across the street was a vast quantity of farm and woodland. I don't sleep well most nights, so it's not unusual for me to be awake throughout the night. On the first night, I was upstairs on my phone watching YouTube videos about aliens, Bigfoot, and things of that kind. At about 3:30, I heard my dog Luna downstairs in the living room going nuts. She was barking and running through the house. I went downstairs to see what was going on. My front door is right by the stairs, so I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs trying to calm Luna down, and I hear what sounds like dogs whimpering and crying. I look out my front door and I can't see what's really out there, but I can definitely hear commotion going on. So I turn on the floodlights and I see a German Shepherd-sized dog sitting and moving around my front yard, crying and whimpering. There was at least 12 or more of them in my little front yard. They were staring across the street at the farm. And why I used German Shepherd for size is because they looked kind of like German Shepherds, just maybe a bit tinier. I didn't see anything across the street, but I knew something was up, because at times you would hear, I'm guessing, they were coyotes barking and howling at all times of the night. But this was nothing like that. It was like they were forced out of their territory, or something to that effect. I watched for a little while, and then me and Luna went upstairs and went to bed. The commotion settled down a short while after. I went back to my bedroom. Eventually, I fell asleep around 5:30, 6 in the morning. The next day, I went to look for dog-like tracks in my front yard. It was covered in these weird tracks. It was crazy. So nothing else really happened that I can think of the rest of that day and night. But the following night was like nothing I had ever experienced before. I went outside for a ciggy at around 2 in the morning. And I'm on my phone watching YouTube as usual. For some reason, it seems darker than the usual outside. I happen to glance at the old wooden fence at the farm across the street, and I see these huge red eyes that are glowing. I mean, bright red. I'm like, WTF is that thing? I can see the pupils and the eyes move clear as day. Now, the fence on the farm is only about 125 to 200 feet away from my porch. Could be less, I'm terrible at eye measurements, but from my porch to the fence was definitely no more than 3 single-lane road widths. So I can see the eyes very clear. I'm staring at these eyes, and the only thing it's doing is watching me. I walked the length of my porch to see if the eyes would follow. I figured it was someone just screwing with passing by cars. But no, the damn pupils were following me from left to right. I had a crowbar on my porch that I used to scare animals off and out from underneath my porch because my Roddy that I had broke the lattice trying to get a mole or something under there. So I had a crowbar in my hand and I was slamming it down on the porch, and that thing did not move, flinch, nothing. Eventually my dog came to the door and started crying, whimpering, and scratching at the door for me to come inside. And I did. I closed the door and I moved the curtains to look out the door window, and the bright red eyes were gone. It was a very odd couple of days indeed. I never got the fight or flight feeling from the creature, or any feeling that I was in danger. I just knew this thing was huge and not normal. Glowing eyes with no light shining on them. Very odd. But that's my encounter. There's some other things that I realized after the fact, but my hands are killing me now, typing this all out on my smartphone. Today's 5th New Jersey subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I'd like to remain anonymous. Please don't share my name or contact info. The reason for me contacting you is due to my aunt wanting me to share what I experienced. I'll be very honest, I was very reluctant due to my past experience. Anyhow, she twisted my arm and told me to do it for her birthday, which was a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure where to start with this, but here goes. This took place in the fall of 2002. I was leaving a friend's house at about 1 in the morning, traveling eastbound on I-80 in New Jersey. There was not anyone traveling on the eastbound side. Just before I approached my exit, I saw something lying across the road. At first I thought it was a bear, but it was too thin, so I slowed down to a crawl with my high beams, approaching this slowly. To my dismay, I was having difficulty trying to distinguish what I was staring at. As I pulled my car up slowly, I noticed this animal had the head of a wolf/hyena. The head was tilted back, looking at the sky. The tongue was hanging out of its mouth with huge canines. This thing was jacked. Its body was a mixture of a human and a dog. Whatever this thing was, it was pure muscle. The ears were pointed with tufts at the end. As I scanned down just below the chest, it looked like it had been shot or hit by something. There was blood and fur all over the curb and the road. I was completely petrified. I've experienced some scary things in my life, but this was on a whole nother level. As I looked at the thing, thoughts were racing through my mind. I was not about to get out of my car. I had the distinct feeling it was playing possum with me. The fur/hair was short. It was not a pleasant sight. I thought to myself, whatever shot or hit this thing is probably out in the tree line watching me. I was not about to stick around and find out, I can tell you that much. I slammed on the gas and took off. When I got to my appointment, I checked all the windows and made sure they were locked. I truly felt as though someone or something had followed me home. The next day I went to work, shared my experience with some coworkers. I was ridiculed about the event. I learned my lesson to keep my mouth shut unless it's someone that is open to this type of stuff. At the end of my workday, I decided to take the same route. I saw no evidence of the animal. There was no blood or fur anywhere. The entire area was clean. The road, the curbsides were dirty with mud, the usual natural debris. Please keep in mind my cell phone was the cheapest one at the time, so I didn't have a camera. I would say about a month later after that experience, my sister had her own. She said it was bring your parent to school day. The usual parent steps up, shares their job, career. My sister kind of drowned it out with the usual policeman, firefighter, lawyer, etc. One parent stepped forward wearing a white lab coat, carrying a medium-sized cage covered with a white sheet. He announced that he was a scientist and he worked with genes and splicing, mixing DNA. He said he had brought a sample of his work. He lifted the sheet, and to my sister's surprise, it was a giant grasshopper the size of a medium dog. She said this thing was hideous. The class fell quiet. A few months after that, my parents were waiting for me outside of the job. They felt like they were being watched. As they turned around, they saw these mechanical birds with glowing red eyes. My mom said they had to have been the same size as vultures. These things were just perched in a tree facing the parking lot. As summer rolled around, a friend of mine was willing to do some work on my car. So I picked up the parts and headed over to his house. After we worked on the car, we headed to this haunted bridge on the Clinton Road. When we pulled up, we saw a black Lincoln Continental parked in a cove with a fishing pole sticking out of the rear passenger window. The place was beautiful, completely serene with birds singing, lots of trees. We parked up on the famous haunted bridge. Supposedly in the 60s, kids were racing, and they ended up crashing their car upside down in the river. The sad thing is one of the kids drowned. The story is if you clear out your car of any change and flip a coin over the bridge, it will end up back in your car. So we did that, and nothing happened. We looked at each other and just laughed. It was a beautiful day, probably at least high 60s, low 70s. As we were joking around, taking in the scenery, we heard this crashing sound like a bulldozer crashing through the forest. The forest was pitch black to our left, which the river cut through. I looked at him and he looked at me with fear in his eyes. I asked, "Is that a bear?" He said, "I've grown up in this area my entire life. I've hunted, camped, hiked. I have never heard anything like that before. That's no bear." I kept staring in the area where the noise was coming from, but I couldn't see anything. Whatever it was extremely strong for snapping trees like twigs, heading towards us. He said, "Let us get the heck out of here." We jumped in the car, and we were like Scooby and Shaggy, running away from a ghost. We didn't say much to each other on the ride back to his house. I'll never forget that day. And tonight's final New Jersey subscriber, Dogman submission. This finishes off Jersey, guys. Hey Jeff, this tale begins not with me personally, but kinda includes the whole family. In 1989, my sister lived a few miles from my parents' house near Woodbury, New Jersey, in a development called Beckett, near Swedesboro, New Jersey. On her way home one night, she saw what she thought was a black wheel coming towards her speeding car from the left side. When the thing got close enough to identify, she said it looked like a baboon with white lines on the side of its long snout. It hit the car, waking up my sleeping niece in the back seat. There was no damage to the vehicle, but she was pretty shaken up when she got home. Then sometime after that, my niece, who was in the car for the first encounter, was going home with her boyfriend when they passed this thing lying in the road eating roadkill. As their car passed the creature, it rose up and ran alongside the vehicle on its hind legs, keeping pace briefly, before running off into the farmer's field. Later, when watching Cryptid Show on Destination America, they showed the video of a hellhound. She excitedly said and pointed at the TV, "That's what we saw." But the thing on the TV wasn't running, only on its hind legs. Now, just before the outbreak of Desert Storm, I was coming home from their house again, from the Beckett address, in my new car, having taken to show my sister. As I was traveling north on Route 295, I was approaching an overpass, Oak Grove Road. I think it's in Rappahannock, New Jersey, when I noticed this black shadow in the corner of the overpass. As I got closer, the shadow moved from the right to the left. As an artist, I know light doesn't work like that. The closer you get to an object, the shadow moves away from the light source, not towards it. This thing was black, and I mean black. It gave off no sheen on its fur. Most of all hair will give off sheen. It had thick fur on its shoulders, neck, which bristled as it moved. The closest thing I could liken it to at the time was a mandrilled baboon, but totally black. Due to local legend of the Jersey Devil, I kind of thought that may have been it, but soon dismissed that idea with nothing else to classify it until I heard about Dogman. Comparing my info with the reports of the Dogman, it seems pretty close, a lot closer than the Jersey Devil. Anyway, as I passed underneath this thing, under the highway overpass, I noticed its arms gripping the pipe it had crossed on. Again, black as black, with no headlights, no highlights whatsoever on its fur. The fingers were thin and bony, probably a good size too, since it was covered a good portion of the pipe. The hair on the back of the neck stood up, sending chills down my spine. I got home and became obsessed with this creature. I told everyone about my encounter. My cousin, also interested in weird stuff, went looking for it with his girlfriend and 2 friends. Well, worst thing about looking for cryptids is finding them. They found it. The girlfriend, who was all fired up about looking for this thing, suddenly burst into hysterics, screaming, "Don't stop, don't stop." Well, my cousin drove past the thing while it lay in someone's driveway eating another roadkill bunny. missing their chance to really examine the thing from the safety of their car. The girlfriend calmed down and they went back, and surprise, it was gone. Still don't know what it was. All accounts of these encounters match in description, so it's some kind of critter running in South New Jersey. Since my sister's family moved away from Beckett, I haven't heard anything more about the creature, nor have I gone looking for it. Like I said, the worst thing about looking for cryptids is finding them.
And there you have it, folks. That's Night Ending Bonus. I do hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps the channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is treated with the respect that we all deserve, so thank you. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there, and they are dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.